All right, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so as we keep rocking along and keep moving, one of the things that we start to talk about is this thing called action potential. Now, every single myofilament of muscle, and what's a myofilament made up of? Actin and myosin. Every one of those has action potential for movement. But something has to start that action in process. And that action is started by a calcium ion. It's so interesting. We mentioned everything comes down to chemistry. Now, we talked about that in nutrition today. So when we think about this calcium ion being so important to movement, you know, before I started teaching this class and studying all this, I only thought of calcium. What do you think of calcium? When I say calcium, what do you think about? Bones, teeth, milk, all of those things. The calcium ion is responsible for that. If we did not have that powerful calcium ion, that actin and that myosin would never cross bridge to make that happen. And it's so important. There's actually a theory, and it's called the Sliding Filament Theory. And I'm on page 7 if you're following along. Now, the sliding filament theory starts off with that muscle just in a resting phase. So all of a sudden, and there's some great pictures right here, all of a sudden you see, you guys, we see that, you guys remember which one's thick and which one's thin, okay? So the green yellow thing, do you think that's actin or myosin? That's actin. What about the furry red one? That's myosin. Okay, so now if you look at these 3 pictures in your book on page 7, and this right-hand side, this is what a muscle looks like at its resting length. You have a little bit of actin and a little bit of myosin, almost like if you line up those little things in your fingers. You have a little bit of actin and a little bit of myosin ready to grab onto each other until what's released? Until calcium is released. It's hanging out, it's in its resting length. So the sliding filament theory starts, it's 5 steps. It starts with resting. So what's this first stage of sliding filament theory? The muscles at rest. So you got it when you got it? Now, there's this next thing called the excitation coupling. So all of a sudden, calcium is released. That's the exciting part. Calcium is what? Exciting. Calcium is what? Exciting. Calcium is what? Exciting. Calcium is? Exciting. Okay, so it all of a sudden excites the, look at me, actin and myosin. It's saying something's about to happen. Okay, so it all of a sudden jumps out and it couples 2 proteins, and those are troponin and tropomyosin. Okay, so actin and myosin get excited. What's the exciter? Okay, and then all of a sudden it says, I'm so excited, I'm going to couple together troponin and tropomyosin. Okay, it's a lot going on. Every time you just blink just in, you just did that. Okay, you have the calcium, you have the troponin, and the tropomyosin. Okay, that's excitation coupling. Okay, look at me. Excitation coupling. Okay, so what is this? Excitation, but what's making this happen? Calcium. What is this? What is this? Troponin, tropomyosin, and what do? Couple up. Okay, I'm trying to make you use the right word so that you remember excitation coupling, excitation coupling. Okay, so got it when you got it. All right, now after troponin and tropomyosin have coupled, okay, there is this big contraction phase. Okay, so we go excitation, coupling, contracting. Does that make sense? Look at it again. Excitation, couple, contract. Show me, show me, show me. Say it. Excitation, couple. That looks like a weak contraction. Show me. Okay, awesome. Now remember, what is this? Okay, but what's causing it? What is this and this? Okay, now here's the thing. This is going to be a fill-in-the-blank test. Know how to spell. Yeah. That was Eric in the background going, Okay. So what we know is this is actually this contraction phase is known as a power stroke. Okay? Power stroke, contraction, power, all of those things come together. Now, what we see happen at this point in time is we see this thing called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You can call it ATP. Say thank you, Miss McKay. Okay, so when troponin and tropomyosin couple, contract in this power stroke, okay? You guys, calcium signals ATP. Calcium signals ATP. Now, after troponin and tropomyosin go through that power stroke, ATP loses one of its phosphagen ions, okay? And it becomes ADP, adenosine triphosphate, down to adenosine diphosphate, okay? It's an incredibly interesting thing. During the contraction phase, it squeezes out a phosphagen ion. Now then, what's amazing about our body is during this next phase called recharge, that ADP ion, okay, because how many does it have if it's D? 2. Your body can go and find that other phosphagen ion, and it becomes ATP again. That is during the recharge phase. So all of a sudden, after the contraction, what did the contraction squeeze out? A phosphagen ion. Okay? So ATP became ADP. Your body during that recharge phase goes and finds that other phosphagen ion. It loads it back up again, and presto changeo, you now have ATP again. Tri, di, tri, di, triphosphate, diphosphate. It's amazing. It happens over and over. And then that's apparently a pretty exhausting process, because at the end, the muscle then has to relax. Let me ask you a question. Could a muscle stay in contraction forever, or would it eventually fatigue? It would eventually fatigue. Eric, can you come up here with me? Okay. Now, here's what we know. All right. Look back at our cool pictures. Go back, everybody jump back to this. This is a muscle in this right-hand side in its resting length. I'm on page 7, friends. Okay. So what do we have grabbing onto each other? We have actin and myosin just hanging out together. Okay, now, when a muscle contracts during that sliding filament phase, all of a sudden, all of the actin and myosin get shoved together. Okay, that's all of a sudden that power stroke. That's whenever ATP cycles to ADP, it goes and finds it, and then it can relax and make it happen again. Now, what we know, when is a muscle when does it have the most action potential? When it is contracted, resting, or stretched? The most potential. Most potential for change during resting phase. Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to go with Eric here. He's just resting. Life is good. Action potential right here. Action potential. What is this? Action potential. What is this? Okay. Now, I want you to completely contract that bicep. So got it when you got it? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, because we know, you can relax a second. What we know is eventually a contracted muscle will lose its ability to stay contracted until it recharges with what? ATP. It's got to go find that other phosphagen ion, or it can't stay contracted forever. Okay, so Eric's going to go into full contraction. Let's get to where everybody can see us. You all look around? Okay. Don't let me extend your arm. Are you with me? Give me some eyes. Look at my eyes. Come down looking at Cody. He ain't gonna help you now. Okay. Are we ready? Okay. Full contraction. Full contraction. Full contraction. Okay. Awesome. You guys, he was compensating with his body because what had given out, the bicep had given out because it all of a sudden couldn't maintain that. Okay. So again, the muscle has the most action potential when it's in what state? Resting. Now, here's the whole thing. Y'all have seen this in the gym. Let's take this muscle and I'm going to completely, I'm not going to hyperextend his elbow, but I am going to keep it extended. And now granted, this is not a perfect example. Think about this. You've seen this. Let's say you see Joe Bubba in the weight room. Okay? Joe Bubba all of a sudden says he's going to show up in the gym for the first time in a long time. What is the first stupid exercise that people go and do when they arrive in the gym? Bicep curls. Watch. Hide. Okay? Are biceps on anterior or posterior chain? Anterior. Excellent. Okay. So what we see is we see him, and maybe he used to be able to curl a little bit, but you know what? It's really, who cares? So all of a sudden, he bellies up to the preacher curl bench. He all of a sudden, the easy curl bar is there. He's completely extended. And all of a sudden, he tries to create force. But because he has what is stretched, the actin and the myosin do not have enough action potential to go into contraction. So in your book, you guys, this is this left-hand picture right there. Okay? That's what that is. Now, let me tell you how athletes compensate for that. They realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't be on the preacher curl bench. So they go and they just stand up. Okay, pretend like you're holding the easy curl bar. Okay? And all of a sudden, I want you to pretend like it's really pretty heavy weight. Kind of more than, I mean, you're not in full extension. Get in full extension. Okay. Now, how much action potential do we have right now? None. So what do we have to do?
Relax.
Okay, but remember, I'm loaded. I'm loaded.
Yeah.
So what do I have to do? Have y'all seen it? You've seen it. You don't realize what you've seen. Have you seen the cheat swing?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, the cheat swing. Okay. You all of a sudden, you got to go from here and you start to rock. You've seen it. If you haven't seen it, watch for it. You've probably done it. You don't want to admit you've done it. Thanks, Eric. Y'all give Eric a hand. Okay. Because I have to get from complete extension into resting phase before I can deliver force again. And every time we do this, we're moving through these phases of the sliding filament theory over and over and over. And it doesn't matter if it's the little muscles in your eyes or the giant muscles in your glutes. That's what's happening during that sliding filament theory. So got it? Awesome. All right, so now let's jump over. Hey, remind me of all the body systems to arrive on the scene. Which one's first? Nervous system. So now we're talking about the neuromuscular system. We jump from the muscular over to the neuromuscular. Okay, I'm going to move the board around, this around so y'all can see the board a little bit better. Okay, but you know what? This marker was great yesterday. I think Dr. Priest drained this marker earlier. Okay, so all of a sudden, what ion starts the entire thing? Calcium. So all of a sudden we have, I am in the week of epic funny fails. Okay, pause. I'm going to go grab a marker. I'm going to pause that recording.
Yeah.
All right, so we're rocking again. Hey, Remind me, what was the ion?
Calcium.
Calcium. So calcium all of a sudden is released. Now, remember, it did what? Excited. And then what did it grab? Trope. Okay? Now, here's what you need to understand with this. Something else starts to get stimulated here. What happened next?
They couple together.
Couple together.
ATP.
ATP. And then all of a sudden, a phosphagen ion jump ships. Okay? And all of a sudden, they all of a sudden find it again, and it becomes what again? ATP. And now, something else has to happen then. We have to have another source to come on. Because you guys, this, if we were to put this in measurable time, this is a millisecond. I mean, we almost can't measure it. It happens so quick. So we have to find another way to let movement keep going. So what we see happening next is there's a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And acetylcholine arrives on the scene on page 9 in the left-hand column. Okay? Now, what was that space called in between the neuron and the muscle? The neuromuscular junction. Awesome. So that acetylcholine jumps across the neuromuscular junction, and then movement starts to happen. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. It sends the nervous impulse across into the muscle. Okay? Now remember, what happens with practice? It gets quicker. Okay? It becomes more efficient and effective. Say it again. Again. Okay. So now, here's what we know. After acetylcholine, okay? Hey, think about it like this. If you have all aces in Vegas, you're all in. Say, got it. Does that make sense? If you have all aces in Vegas, you're all in. You're winning for sure. Okay. Here's what you know. Once acetylcholine jumps across the neuromuscular junction, we stimulate every single muscle fiber. Okay? It's all of them or none of them. Once it makes the jump, it's all of them or none of them. What is it?
All of them.
Do it again.
All of them.
Do it again.
All of them.
What stimulates all or none? Acetylcholine does. What stimulates all or none? What stimulates all or none? Okay. Now, once we have stimulated muscles, okay, we do this new thing where we establish twitch. Okay? We establish twitch. Now, depending on what we're about to do, either fast twitch or slow twitch, muscle fibers are recruited. Okay? But remember, it's all or none in the beginning. It's all or none. All or none. Then depending on what happens next as the story unfolds, we start to see things beginning to change. Now, we actually see, once twitch happens, we start to stimulate two different things. We stimulate type 2 muscle fibers and type 1 muscle fibers. Type 2 muscle fibers. Hey, online team, can you see? Okay. Aquita, can you see, babe? Awesome. Okay, so we know that type 2 fibers are kind of known as our fast twitch fibers. Sprinters, excellent. Okay, now we quote call these our slow twitch fibers, our type 1 fibers. I don't like the word slow because I am more genetically a type 1 athlete. Now, when you land on the planet, okay, by divine design, you have a mixture of type 1 and type 2 fibers. Now, it's going to depend on your genetic coding to where you are more predominantly 1 or predominantly 2. People that tend to be incredibly efficient and effective at power, speed, all of explosive, tend to be more type 2. People that tend to be the Energizer bunnies and go 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 and be really efficient and effective are probably a higher makeup genetically of type 1 fibers. Yes, be sure to ask loud so your people can hear.
Motor behavior, we just compared as the type 2 is sprinters and type 1 is lumpers.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that as the page turns. Okay? As a matter of fact, go ahead and turn that page. Okay. Whenever we look at that table, 1.1 there on page 10, you guys, here's where we see, and then on page 11 is the sport that's higher and lower in type 1 and 2. And then on page 10, you guys, let me show you what I did in my book. I took that chart there and I drew a pretty big, bold, vertical line between those different muscle fiber characteristics. And you guys, in your brain, I want that line to think about being a reminder of this line. And don't cross the line, okay? Because here's what we know. We know that depending on the activity that you are involved in, you can move within the muscle fiber types, but type 1 fibers stay type 1, type 2 fibers stay type 2. So don't cross the line. Now they can take on more characteristics. For example, if I have been dealing with, now over here all the way to the right are type 2X fibers. These are the most explosive. What are these? The most? Explosive. The most? Explosive. The most? Explosive. Okay. Whenever you think about this right now, think about vertical jump. Bam. Okay. Think about vertical jump. Now, here's what we know about this. We know that if I take my basketball powerhouse vertical jumper best ever, and I all of a sudden train this person like a marathon runner. This type 2X fiber has the ability to transfer to a type 2AC fiber. Okay? Which one of these is the most explosive? Type 2X. So is this fiber as explosive as this one?
No.
So if I train a vertical jumper like a marathoner, am I increasing or decreasing their efficiency and effectiveness at vertical jumping? Decreasing. So why do we have athletes training in a way that they don't compete? Because they're being
It
stupid.
should be like that, right? Yeah.
It should not.
Yeah,
Here's the thing. Do I need a vertical jumper or a basketball player to ever run farther than the distance of the court? No.
A little bit.
For what?
Because when you're on the court, you running back and forth still, but when you're on the court, like when you like running not long, not super long, but like a kind of a farther distance.
Do I need basketball players to ever in their training run 100 meters?
No.
No. I don't, because what is that going to do?
Well, actually, yeah, because I played basketball in high school, like our coach. Like,
No, okay.
I played basketball in high school, and our coach made us run on the track like 100 yards. I'm like, lying to y'all. I guess to like keep us our energy level. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know, but that's what he did, and it seemed like it worked. Cause it didn't seem like we got tired, you know, when we kept running back and forth on the court.
Maybe it was like a.
Probably that just all of your endurance.
Yeah, probably.
But not really as much as your jumping
Skill,
power.
right? You know what I'm saying?
Again, so your team was genetically blessed here, okay? But just kind of like I talked about with nutrition,
You selling them short.
bingo. Now, they're pretty powerful here still. But what we're going to find out as the story continues to unfold is between acetylcholine and the next energy system, which is phosphagen, and then glycogen, every time you shift from an energy system, you lose power. Think about downshifting in a vehicle. Every time you downshift, think about it. If you are driving a 4-speed and you all of a sudden get speed going like crazy, that's in fourth gear, that's when that engine is the most powerful. When you have to downshift, you're decreasing energy potential. So again, when you change energy systems, and you don't know those yet, but all of a sudden, I'm baiting you with this because all of a sudden it will make perfect sense. Okay, think about this. Just like you read from left to right, this is the lowest force, this is the highest force, and this is the exclamation point on the end of that sentence. It's funny, now listen. This is actually the most powerful, but this is really where it all begins. Okay, and I'm going to draw this differently tomorrow so that you see more of the story, so that there's more visual aspect in it with you. Okay, but for the purpose of really putting things in the right categories, you guys, check this out. Type 2X motor neurons are giant. Why do the motor neurons for type 2X fibers need to be huge? Because they're delivering a huge amount of force. You guys, over here, if I am running a marathon, I'm working on smaller neurons because I'm not producing the amount of force. It's a completely different energy system. So all of these motor neurons are huge. You guys, think about this. They can be recruited super fast. They have a high recruitment level. You guys, they've got a contraction, relaxation. You guys, now listen, check this out. Come down here to the fatigue resistance. Okay? Do type 2X fibers fatigue quickly?
Yes.
Yes. So let me ask you this. What if I took that vertical jumper and I said, okay, you're going to give it your absolute best. You're going to land and you're going to give it your absolute best. You're going to land and you're going to give it your absolute best. What would happen to that vertical jump? Lower and lower and lower. Because it's like going, I'm done until you let me recharge. I'm done. Whereas if you stop and think about these fibers over here, I said, what did I compare these to? The Energizer Bunny. It does what? It keeps going and going and going and going. Very fatigue resistant because they're not delivering a ton of force. So think about that. You guys, when you look at this, capillary density. Hey, what kind of people are you? Smart people. When you look at capillary density and you think about type 1 fibers, why would type 1 fibers have a high capillary density? You need more blood because you need more oxygen. Excellent tag team answer. Okay, and you know what? You had a question a minute ago, Calvin. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, that's why the bikers, that's why they do like the blood doping and stuff like that. like to get more oxygen in their blood.
Yep.
They're going forever.
They can go forever, and there's two different ways to blood dope, and we're going to talk about those. One is using a drug called EPO, erythropoietin, and the other one is to infuse your own blood cells.
What about
But-
endurance pills?
Pardon?
Endurance pills.
Research hasn't shown that to be scientifically effective unless you believe it's effective. Think about the foundation that we talked about. How powerful is the mind? Okay, so people think if it's improving, the placebo effect is amazing. It is. So it's really, really, really interesting. If I could come in, and let's just say that I walked in and I said, okay, guys, I have found magic pills where as soon as I give every single one of these to you, you're going to take this pill and your training in this class is just going to skyrocket. Okay? And you guys, if you believe it, it'll happen. You have to believe that and convince yourself. Now, on the flip side of that, how many people have taken advantage of other people by that other thing? A lot. You guys, that is just wrong. Okay? So as we continue through this twitch thing, on one of the plays you need to train for is knowing characteristics of type 1 fibers. For example, I might say, tell me 3 characteristics of type 1 fibers. And you're going to say they are fatigue resistant, they have high endurance, and low force production. But here's the thing, you got a lot of options. So what, now listen, remember,
It's on the chart.
you got a lot of options. So listen, let me give you some advice. I want you to look at these and say, hey, that's something I can identify with. That'll be easy for me to learn, not memorize. Say, oh, remember, why have I gone blank? Remind me of your name. Ashley, I'm sorry, Ashley. First day, I learned everybody pretty good. Okay, so remember, Ashley just told us why there's more red blood cells, because they need more oxygen. So if you can remember that slow twitch fibers have a higher number of red blood cells, and that works in your memory, then make that your memory. Okay? And then you're going to know some things about these type 2A and 2AC. Okay? Like these ones, this is the A, or like the C's are way, that one is, it's a whole continuum, you don't know it yet. These 2 C's, these are the ones that are closest to the line. So what happens to force potential as we go from right to left? It decreases. But what happens to endurance potential? It increases. Very nice. So you're going to need to know some of these characteristics as a great play on game day. Then I'm going to ask you some of the sports that are associated with either type 1 dominant or type 2 dominant. So page 10 and page 11 have some really quality plays on them that you need to commit to memory. Okay, let's end with something fun. So what I want you to do is I want you to stand up. Watching at home, stand up. But remember, your camera is going to give me a crotch shot, so don't do that. So back up. Thank you. Yes, Miss McKay says stuff like that. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to choose what you think your dominant foot is. Which one do you feel like you're most efficient and effective on? Okay? Then I want you to balance on that foot. Pretty good. Now, close your eyes. Whoa, it got kind of sketchy in here. I wish y'all would have seen y'all look like trees swaying in the wind. Okay? Now, stop, rest. Same foot. Now you know what's about to happen. So adjust, close your eyes. That was better. That wasn't awesome, but it was better. Let's try it one more time. 3rd time's the charm. Okay, be better, be better, be better. Okay? Lock in, lock in, lock in. Close your eyes, don't move. How many of you feel everything in your foot moving? Your foot's going like that, isn't it? Okay, sit down. Let's talk about this. Now, what we just talked about are these things called proprioceptors. Proprioceptors tell us where our body is in space. Have y'all seen that thing in like a carnival where you get in the middle and it spins this way and it spins this way? It's called it, you know, that gyro thing that moves you in all different directions. Whenever you get in that thing and it moves you this way and that way and this way and that way, it is mixing up your proprioceptors. They're like, I don't know which way is up, I don't know which way is down. Anybody played the spinning bat game? Put your head on the bat, spin around, spin around, spin around. You stand up and what do? Okay. You never played the silly bat game?
Yeah.
Okay. Hadn't thought about that in a while, have you? Now you want to play. So that is messing up your proprioceptors. It's really playing tricks on your mind. Did you realize that your visual field helps you with your proprioception? Yes or no? You should have learned that just now, because all of a sudden you were locked. And then what happened when I took away your visual field? Y'all look terrible. I love you, but you look terrible. Okay? So as we think about proprioceptors, they kind of keep us safe. But when they go wrong, it's kind of funny. Okay? Thank goodness they don't go wrong very often. Two different analogies that you'll remember proprioceptors. I like to tell a story on my husband Stan, and this even was before we were married. And so he was going to his brother's wedding rehearsal the night before the wedding. Okay? And it was like at this fogo de chao, Brazilian steakhouse, fire, food, meat, all of this. And so he walks up to the door, okay? And it has this giant wrought iron handle on it, okay? So all of a sudden, remember, visual field tells us how to react to the environment, okay? Which is so interesting how people that are blind actually have this heightened awareness of this going on. It's like their proprioceptors go into overdrive. It's a beautiful thing. But for those of us that have our visual field, so Stan reaches, he grabs. Remember, all or none. Remember we talked about that? So all of a sudden, he grabs and pulls. But it's one of those faux painted doors to where it looks like it's really heavy and all that. And he's like loaded. Bam! Hits himself right here on the cheek. Has to go to the emergency room and get stitches. So there are the wedding pictures that Stan has. You know, Stan has stitches in the wedding pictures. So your proprioceptors can go wrong. The beautiful thing is most of the time they go perfect. Think about this. Think about a receiver that is making the run and all of a sudden glances over the shoulder, but can land this far inside the line. It's beautiful. Think about a high jumper that really and truly can perceive exactly where that bar is. When your proprioceptors are firing perfectly, that's when you're game on. Now again, we know that they go awry, bam. The other analogy is a bad one on me. I told you we have one of our kids is away at college, so I only live with 2 men now instead of 3. So, you know, we have our routines and all of this that we're used to. Our body has some muscle memory. Okay, so let's just pretend that it's the middle of the night. Okay, and all of a sudden I need to wake up and go to the ladies' room. Okay, except I share a ladies' room with my husband. Okay, the boys had their, so all of a sudden my motor patterns know exactly where to go in the dark even. They really do, because I've trained that. So all of a sudden I'm sitting down to take care of things. But someone that I'm still married to left the seat up.
I know how that.
Right. Okay, now in reality, okay, here's the thing. Okay, my muscle, it's not funny, is it? Okay, so here's the thing. My muscles knew exactly when to be in control and when to relax, because that had been drilled into my motor patterns. Okay? Now, in reality, it's really just falling this far. How far does it feel like you're falling? It feels like you are like, boom, okay? And so all of a sudden my proprioceptors went wrong because something tricked them, even though I wasn't being dependent on my visual field. Now, you have two kinds of proprioceptors in your body, and I'm rocking and rolling over onto page, oh wait, I skipped a page, sorry. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. We're still on page 11. The first one that we're going to talk about are muscle spindles. Now, muscle spindles are so fabulous because they are a great safety mechanism for us. So give me some hands, give me some eyes. Okay, muscle spindles run along the length of the muscle fiber, show me. And they're just like the police. They're just keeping us safe. Everything is good. You know what? You're not overstretching. You got this going on. You're working within your range of motion. I'd like it if you had a little more, but you're keeping me safe. Okay? They're like the safety patrol. Now, as long as we keep things going, those are the ones that are really going to keep us safe, keep us from injuring ourselves. Now, the next layer of the law is when all of a sudden, you know, the Texas Rangers are called in because it got worse. The police needed to pass the torch to a higher authority. And that's what Golgi tendon organs are. After you have stretched a spindle too far, a Golgi tendon organ will fire and stop you in your tracks before you go too far and rip apart what? The actin and the myosin. So what happens when actin and myosin gets forcefully ripped apart? What happens? Injury. And that doesn't matter whether it's in your eye or in your foot or in your bicep. Whenever it is forcefully ripped apart, there is injury that happens in that sarcomere. Okay? The smallest contractile unit of this is called a sarcomere. So when actin and myosin cross bridge, they form a sarcomere. They form a sarcomere. They form a sarcomere. When actin and myosin cross bridge, they form a sarcomere. Okay. Now here's what happens. If all of this does not get to happen in a mannerly fashion, and you blow through your spindles, Golgi tendons try to come in and stop it. If you go past the Golgi tendon, that's whenever, listen, there's a sound effect, which means not good. Not good. You guys, our bodies were built to kind of keep us safe. Okay, it's a magnificent story. It is so cool when you really think about what's going on in your body. Okay, so again, muscle spindles, safety patrol, Golgi tendon, all of a sudden the Texas Rangers get called in to really solve the crime scene. If they can't solve the crime scene, destruction. Destruction, destruction, tearing. All of a sudden we have to go through repair. Okay, that's what has to happen. You guys, I blew through my Golgi tendon organs. My muscle spindles were saying, McKay, I'm trying to keep you safe. You're doing too much force production right now. Too much force production. Golgi tendon organs were like, girl, stop. And you know what? It started in October.
I was about to say, was you tight? What point?
Well, I aggravated it first in October, and I gave it about 2 weeks rest, but not, I mean, when I say rest, I mean like still teaching, but not running. Okay, because I teach about 4 or 5 classes a week, and and it's part of my world. I mean, I do heavy squats at least twice a week, and I haven't been able to do that, and my legs are getting skinny and all of this stuff. So what we know is I let it rest a little bit, and then I jump back in. aggravated it again. Let it rest. What did I do? Jump back in. And I thought, wow, this third time could be bad. And it all of a sudden could have completely snapped. The way it is right now, it just sort of, when you run your fingers down my Achilles tendon, it's like this. It gets in and in. So it had been trying to repair itself right there, and I just didn't give it enough time to repair. I blew through the Golgi tendon organs in that moment. So there was muscle splintering that all of a sudden I got to give it time to heal. Okay? And healing takes time. And here's the thing. What do you think the hardest tendon in your body is to heal? Achilles tendon.
Year long.
So, when you get tennis elbow or tendonitis in your elbow, if you will back off a little bit, it will heal pretty quick. But tendonitis, and the only way to do it was to shut it down and immobilize it. Okay? So again, I've been at a right angle in the boot now for yesterday was 3 weeks. Okay? We're hoping we're going to reevaluate 1 more week. So we're going to see what's happening. I'm in zero pain, but of course I haven't used it. So I'm going to take rehab seriously. I really am. The alternative of snapping that bad boy, that's a year-long recovery. It's a year recovery. First off, the cool thing is I get to take the boot off to drive and to shower. I sleep in the boot. That way I don't do something stupid in my sleep. And then also when you snap it, it ends up being, number 1, surgery, then 8 weeks non-weight bearing on the little scooter. No driving, no scootering. I live in Granbury. Every class would be taught via Zoom. I'm glad to know it could work. However, I don't want to be that way. I want to be here. And so that would be a major inconvenience for me to get someone to bring me to work every day. So it's in a cast, not even in a boot. Then it's 2 to 3 more to 4 more weeks in the boot after that. Then it's 6 months of rehab. It's the most powerful tendon in your body. And when you blow through your Golgi tendon organs and don't, remember yesterday we talked about the difference between listening and talking. You guys, I finally talked to myself and said, Amy, stop. And I'm glad because it didn't snap. So I'm being grateful. Okay? So now listen. We got a lot to do and really pay attention. Next, you guys, we have like a minute left in this chapter. Really and truly, just a minute. Okay, so let me tell you what I need for you to take away from this chapter. I need for you to know that you have this amazing heart. Say, I got it. Okay, you need to know that you have this amazing, each pump has 2 chambers, the atrium and the ventricle. Say, I got it. All right. Now, you need to know that your SA node is your pacemaker. Say, got it when you got it.
Got it.
Awesome. Now, again, you don't need to know the path of blood through the heart for this test. The reason I want you to know about your SA node is there's the possibility that you may train a client in your future that has had a pacemaker. And if you have a client that has had a pacemaker, and you're telling them, hey, work harder, get your heart rate above 120. If their pacemaker is set for 120, where's their heart rate going to stay? 120. Okay? These are things. Remember, you don't want to do a back squat with someone that has an injury where? T1. Excellent. Okay, now let's talk about arteries, and let's talk about the blood. Okay, arteries carry blood away from the heart. Now, once they arrive, before the exchange part, there's a thing called a capillary. Okay? Now, capillaries, and I love the book that it says this, because I got an analogy. It's where oxygen, fluid, nutrients, electrolytes, hormones, and other things trade out. Okay, now listen. Capillaries. Kind of sounds like a frat party. Think about all the things that get exchanged at frat parties. So instead of capillaries, think about kappa parties. Okay, capillaries, capillary, that kind of help. That's where all that's exchanged. Okay, and then after all that exchange, the veins carry the blood back to the heart. Okay, what carries it away? Where does everything get exchanged? Capillaries. What brings it back? Veins. Excellent. Veins. All right. Now, your blood is made up of this stuff called hemoglobin. Which one of the muscle fibers, type 1 or type 2, are rich in hemoglobin? Type 1. Why? They need more what? They need more oxygen. Excellent. And this is this whole thing. Red blood cells are a major component of blood. This is a beautiful thing. Now, all of a sudden, your respiratory system, you have your trachea, go like this, it's your trachea. It breaks off into right and left ventricles. Say, got it? Okay. Not ventricles. Did I say that right? Bronchioles. Golly, I messed up on that. I'm tired. Okay. And then it goes down. Now listen, after you get to that two-way split, okay, it has to go through 23 different channels before it gets to the alveoli, where that oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. Okay, it has to go through 23 things, channels, all of those. It's a great way to look at those. All of those little things, there's 23 of them before it gets to the alveoli, before it can actually make that exchange with oxygen and carbon dioxide. I think it's really cool. There happens to be 23 chromosomes in the human body. There's 23 pathways before you get to the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Take a breath. Now listen, tomorrow is going to be awesome. But listen, we're not doing chapter 2. We're going to chapter 3. I think this book is put together in a little bit different way. Chapter 3, you guys, is actually going to pick up right here, and we're going to rock out all of the entire energy systems. Now listen, it's imperative that you do some training. It's imperative that you do some training for chapter 3. You have to spend some time training with what we talked about today and looking ahead in the training manual for tomorrow. Now, also, I don't know the next plan about a test or game day on Monday, but I can tell you, you do not need to worry about commuting over. We will not be present in the classroom. Hold tight for your next play. Okay? I'll stay in contact with you through the text message, through email, and all that. Any questions?
That's it.
Oh, God bless y'all. Y'all did awesome. Bye, team. See you. Hey, did you learn anything today? Shelby, did you learn anything? Yes. All right. Very cool. Very cool. I'm so proud of y'all.
Oh, matter of fact, I take a picture of the sports nutrition.